Hello everybody, welcome back to the show. Today we're continuing our series in association with my friends at the DLD conference in Munich in January of next year, of January 2025. DLD will be celebrating its 20th year anniversary. And today I spoke to Douglas Rushkoff, one of technology's great critics and futurists, and in his own way believers, about the last 20 years in the history of technology. And as always in this series, I began by asking Douglas Rushkoff what he remembers about January 2005.
In January 2005, I came to realize how much the development of digital technology was fueled by the needs of capital for exponential growth. I thought after the dot-com crash of 99 and 2000, I thought the internet had fought off this infection of the dot-coms, the infection of capitalism, and was now going to return to its social roots. I actually, and some people credit me, and it's probably true, coined the term social media to say not, oh, Facebook is coming as social media, but that the internet is an essentially social medium and will fight off all infections from government, business, military, you name it, and return to its social roots. But by 2005, I saw that the early social media platforms were actually already surrendering themselves to the agenda of corporate growth, to the agenda of Goldman Sachs and their various other investors. And as I started to look at that, I became aware that we were in a bigger bubble than the dot-com bubble. This was around the time I had gotten mugged in front of my apartment. I was living in Brooklyn at the time, and I posted on a local parents list the exact location of where I'd been mugged, and I got 2 emails within 10 minutes saying, how dare you put the location where you were mugged? Now my property values are going to go down. And what I found out was that these people were not even selling their properties, but they needed to be able to refinance their properties at better valuations, so they needed their property value to go up just in order to stay in their houses. And I thought, oh my God, this is a weird moment. So 2005 was the year I realized, oh shit, there's a huge house of cards, and this is not going to end well. And I started rallying against Web 1 turning to Web 2, turning to Web 3, all of this exponential meta financialization that was going on, that the internet that I knew and loved was really just the poster child for this abstraction and algorithmic expansion of essentially bankrupt marketplaces.
That's the ultimate, Doug, of NIMBYism, isn't it? Not in my backyard. Don't get mugged in my backyard because it will bring the price of my real estate down.
Yeah, it'll bring the price. It's not even, don't get mugged in my backyard because I don't want to get mugged in my backyard. They would rather hide the location and prevent law enforcement, right, from responding than to threaten the abstracted number value, right? So the number on Zillow that their house is worth means more to them than the quality of life that they'll experience in that house. And that's, I mean, boy, that's a perfect metaphor for where we've ended up.
That's Marxist German ideology in one NIMBY anecdote, isn't it?
It is, only you can't say the word Marx or people think something's wrong with you. They don't know from Marx.
But that's that's the Marx Brothers, of course.
No, the Marx Brothers, yes, exactly. Different Jews. Yeah.
It's always the Jews. Doug, so you use these terms Web 1 and Web 2. You were there, just as I was, when those terms were meaningful. Yeah. What do the terms mean?
Well, Web 1 was like the regular web, where you put up a shingle and have, like, bicyclelocks.com or dogcollars.com.
Or Amazon.com or NewYorkTimes.com.
Well, the original Amazon.com, yes, which was a bookseller. Web 2 is when Amazon has Toys R Us on Amazon.com, if you remember that, or all of these other retailers coming on. So what Web 2 was it was partly Tim O'Reilly, I think, coined the term, when he was saying, look, if you're all competing down there on Web 1, all of your little stores, Web 2 is being able to aggregate a whole bunch of those stores into your website. So what you really want to do if you want to make money is level up, go meta on all these people competing and become the aggregator of those things. It's what Peter Thiel in his book calls going from 0 to 1. You operate one order of magnitude above everyone else down here who's competing, and you kind of control the landscape on which they compete. So you've got nothing at stake down there. You're more the bookie than you are the bettor.
So in a sense, it was going from the website of 1.0, the dot-com boom, where everyone wanted a dot-com. I had Audio Cafe, you had others, to becoming a platform. People didn't talk about platforms in the 90s, did they?
They didn't talk about platform. The internet was the platform that we all shared. You know, no, we didn't think in terms of platforms. We thought in terms of almost like places or utilities or apps. We used to talk about the killer app. So there was the internet, and then there was which email program did you use? Pine, Elm, Eudora. There was chatting. Did you use IRC, or did you use a piece of shareware to filter your IRC channels? You're on Usenet, or you're getting files. Are you using Gopher or Veronica? So there were these apps, but you didn't even have the apps on your own computer. They were the applications that were out on the internet that you used in order to access different things. So no, the idea of software on your computer was not for when you were online. That was for when you were at home, playing with data, or using Mac Paint, or word processing to create a document that you would then stick out there. The platforms really were originally ways for you to have, say, a website without building a website. So in the old days, every individual who was playing on the net, eventually, you built your own little home page, which is your online identity. But that was hard. You had to learn a little bit of HTML. It took, honestly, if you were halfway smart, it took an afternoon, right, to figure out how to do that, which is more time and work that most people were willing to put into something like that. I mean, look how long it took you to learn the alphabet as a kid, and how to read and write. No one's going to put that kind of effort into learning this next set of languages or way of communicating. So places like MySpace and Facebook really gave you the ability to answer a few questions, and then it would generate your homepage. It looked like everyone else's. It was cookie cutter. You had no more control over the format of the thing. It wasn't like your front yard anymore, but you had a presence, and it was a heck of a lot easier. So the platforms were where, this is a platform of a whole bunch of different web pages that you go to one website, facebook.com, and you can see all these little web pages. So again, it's a platform. Instead of everyone with their individual web pages, you aggregate the web pages of millions of people and then make money selling their data.
You mentioned Tim O'Reilly and Web 2. He was always ambivalent. Now I think he's become a critic of what happened.
Yeah.
There were many, though, and you remember this as well as anyone, who thought that Web 2 was a good thing. It would democratize media. It would give everybody access. You didn't need to even spend an afternoon creating a website. Now anyone could create a website in minutes. We could all have our home pages on Facebook. We could become automatic pundits on Twitter. We could put our music up. We could publish our writing. And it did away with the supposed elites. Were you ever half seduced with that, Doug? Did you ever believe maybe this is right? I know in retrospect, of course, and you mentioned earlier you began to realize in January 2005 that things weren't quite right. But did you ever believe in the Web 2 vision?
I believed in the Web 2 vision before the web. I believed in that vision in 1991, 1992, partly because the things you had to do to get online in the first place, they weren't a hazing, but they engendered an approach to being online that was very cooperative and collaborative. The things you had to learn about how files are shared and how software works, the basic things you had to learn command lines and sort of simple internet behavior that worked, it assumed certain things about what you do online, what's appropriate, what's not, how do you treat the new people who come online. There was a welcoming atmosphere. We're building a new frontier. We're building a new community together. And it wasn't a shopping mall. One of the rules of the early internet was that you weren't allowed to buy or sell anything. You weren't allowed to advertise. You had to sign an agreement saying, I'm going to use this place for research and experimentation, and I'm not going to do anything commercial. So you went out there feeling very differently than people do now. It wasn't about selling things and getting influence and being able to market. So I did believe, I actually left theater. I quit a career in theater to become an internet person because I thought that the elitism and expensive commercialism that plagued theater wouldn't be in effect on the internet. I thought, now this is going to be the people's medium, rather than doing a Brecht play for $75 a ticket, I'm going to live that sort of Brechtian Marxist communitarian dream out here in digital space with my other sweet deadhead San Francisco fractal, rendering brethren.
And then you haven't used the C word yet, capitalism. As it happens, Doug, we're doing this interview around the corner from Wall Street, so we're literally and metaphorically all too familiar with American capitalism. The dot-com boom was, of course, a Wall Street thing. Right. So it's kind of, in an odd way, is it ironic that you began to understand how dominant Wall Street was, or the principles of capitalism, after the bust, by about 2005? What happened between the dot-com bust, where all the businesses went away and everyone lost their money, and 2005?
Well, dot-com bust happened, and I actually wrote a cover story for Yahoo Internet Life, which was this, at the time, pretty successful magazine, and it was something like, we're back, it was a revolutionary, and guy, it's like, we've taken the net back, we won. So when it first happened, 2000, 2001, I was like, we kicked them off, we fought them off, the social agenda of the net is back. And I thought, yay, we're here. And I looked at early, what we called social media at the time, early social media like Blogger even, as a sign that, okay, this is cool. Everyone is being asked to write, to participate. We're all becoming authors in this new space. I love that people's hands were off the mouse and on the keyboard, sharing their thoughts with each other. And it kind of worked, in some ways up till the time that these ultimately profitable companies needed to make more money faster. Even Facebook, for all of its early problems, the main problem I had with Facebook was that it didn't offer the true creativity of the net to the average citizen. It offered a consumer profile and conversation to people. But now that I'm a bit older, I realize most people don't want to be truly, fully creative and making their own website and creating their own identity. 80% of people really are happy with what's on offer. And rather than begrudging them, their conformity, I should celebrate that they want to share at all, that they want to put pictures up, that's really should be enough. Most people in the 70s when I was growing up, as creative as they got was going over to their house and they would do a slideshow on a Kodak carousel of their summer vacation that we would all sit through. So I shouldn't have been so sad about it. But people were moving more towards conformity than they were originality. And then the platforms really, by 2005, they were still jockeying for control. But between 2005 and 2010 was when they started to look for other ways of not just making revenue, but maintaining exponential growth, which is what you need for not just Wall Street, but venture capital. And that's when they started to look at, we're going to start monetizing people's data. Rather than just advertising to people, we are going to sell people to sell their data.
How is this connected, Doug, to the broader political developments in the U.S. at the time? We're speaking on Wall Street, around the corner, less than a mile from the World Trade Center, or the ex-World Trade Center. Did 9/11 and the paranoia that engendered and the foreign wars, were these things happening in parallel or were they connected?
I think they were connected, honestly. I remember 9/11, and I feel like right before 9/11, we had reached kind of peak openness, peak enthusiasm for the butterfly that flaps its wings in Brazil leading to a hurricane in New York. There was this, people were catching on to the idea that the internet connected us all and allowed for a guy getting beaten by cops in Los Angeles to have his videotape move around the world overnight and force something to happen. There was a new sense that the power was on the periphery thanks to networking. Then 9/11 happens and shows, look, 8 guys with box cutters can take a multi-billion-dollar aerospace industry and turn it against the centers of power overnight. So all of a sudden it was like, this openness, all of these open systems and butterfly effects can lead to huge system-wide disasters in a matter of seconds as well. And I feel like things shut down. That's when Peter Thiel and Palantir all of a sudden had an argument to make for building a surveillance culture. That's when people became willing to surrender their privacy and wanting more kind of centralized control and authority over these networks. And oddly enough, it led to a right-wing reactionary insanity that's premised on free speech, but is actually based in authoritarian control. It's an interesting little paradox there.
And yet some people might push back and say, that's all very well, a little too theoretical, Professor Rushkoff. But there was Obama, there was optimism in America, lots of things were changing. Is there any truth to that in the late?
No. I think Obama used the language of the internet. He used the language, it credited me, he used language from my book Prescient to say, we are the thing. It's happening now. Change happens in the moment, right now. He made Prescient required reading in his first administration because it was all about what the internet did to our psyche. How the internet is asynchronous, but human beings are synchronous. We're in real time, and how do we, the way we create movements now, and an always-on, now-based society is not with these eyes-on-the-prize linear journeys toward some future success, but we do it in the present. But for Obama, this was just words. It was words. He was actually building a technocracy of drone pilots and very cold, distant administration. Obama was much closer to, Mark Zuckerberg than he was to you or I, to a people's person. Obama was so bad at doing the thing that he announced that's why we had the Occupy movement. The Occupy movement of 2011 was the realization of what Obama was saying but couldn't actually do. He didn't even come behind Occupy. He didn't. It was here. Come on in. We're here. This is what you asked for. But it wasn't what he actually wanted. So no, he was a great orator, and I liked so much of what he said, and I liked having someone who respected the rule of law in the White House. I mean, that was great, and having a person of color. This is all wonderful, terrific stuff. But he was not the realization of the people's technium, as Kevin Kelly, would use the word. He was a more of a technocrat, helping traditional Goldman Sachs style capitalism maintain itself in an almost reactionary way. After the failures of little George Bush, that guy bankrupted everything. So it was after that the Gulf War, which we went to because of 9/11 in a different country, or whatever that was really he had a hard job. I will admit, but it was not an extension of the people's movement that was fomented by the internet.
Doug, I want to get to Occupy because you were one of the theorists and activists involved in it. But before we get there, of course, we've got to deal with the Great Recession. How significant? Because in a sense, the way you present what the light bulb that went off in your head in January 2005, you were essentially predicting, if not the Wall Street crash of 2008-9, it's called the Great Recession, whatever it was, a banking failure. So was this surprising to you, or were you expecting something like this?
Oh, I was expecting it. So much so, there's a Wall Street Journal article that called one of my books, I forgot what, it might have been as far back as Coercion. They called it conspiracy theory because I had documented how Goldman Sachs was betting against its own mortgage properties, mortgage investments. And they were like, oh, of course they couldn't do that. And I was talking about how people were going on CNBC, talking badly about stocks that they were selling short on and talking positive about ones that no one was disclosing anything at the time. So I was writing about that as if, my God, look at how this actually works. And they called me a conspiracy theorist. And in 2005, 2006 is when I was writing about, the people I knew who were, who were financing their homes with strategic refinancing. That I was looking for a place to live, and I had real estate agents saying things to me like, "Oh, we can get you in this house. We can get you in a place I can't afford." And they're like, "Yeah, don't worry. Everybody does it. That's how it works." And it's like, no, I'm not going to go live somewhere I cannot afford, even if everybody else is doing it. And that was when I thought, oh, this is going to come crumbling down or tumbling down. And it's interesting because it was technology. It was still these mortgage derivatives, these derivatives of derivatives, the giant financial instruments that were used to allow this to happen would not have been possible without digital technology. The successive abstractions that were required, the kind of math that was required, and the ultra-fast trading and all the end runs were a product of a digitally enabled marketplace. Now it was pretty late. It was in 2013, the New York Stock Exchange was purchased by its derivatives exchange. Right? It should be mind-blowing to hear that, right? The stock exchange, which is an abstraction of the marketplace, was consumed by its own abstraction, by a derivatives, by financialization itself. That should be a clue that the tail is wagging the dog, that the real economy is not as big as the abstracted derivative economy. And that's why today, when you hear people saying, oh no, AI is going to eat humanity, that's the example that they're actually using, right? When the abstracted reality, when the meta-human becomes bigger than the human, what happens to the human, right? Is AI Web 2 to humanity's Web 1? That's what the tech bros are wondering.
And who was teaching who, Doug? Was it the Wall Street guys teaching Silicon Valley and Zuckerberg and Peter Thiel, or the reverse? Or did they, by the late 2000s, were they essentially the same thing?
In terms of they became the same thing, didn't they? It went back and forth for a while. I feel like in the early days, the Wall Street guys paid us techies to do our companies. Then we crashed the .com thing in 99 or 2000, and by the time Facebook and Blogger and all those ones went to Wall Street, the venture capitalists said, okay, we'll give you money, but this time you do it like we say. So the venture capitalists then had the power to say, that's a great idea, making things to help people, but now we're going to pivot that company to this. So the Silicon Valley venture capitalists, maybe unlike the Wall Street ones, became really good at seeing a business and then seeing how can we pivot that to make exponential growth and then sell it to the next round of investors. Then even smarter techies, which you could say smarter business thinking techies, like, you know, what generation would that be? Musk and the WeWork guy and Thiel, and these ones then conceived of digital.
Newman was the WeWorks guy, but he was a fraud. I mean,
he was a fraud, but he wasn't. It was a smart.
Well, I mean, Musk is many things. I mean, there's an element of fraud, so Thiel. But are they all essentially charlatans, in your view?
Depends what you mean by a charlatan. Anyone looking to make their next $1 billion has a problem, right? What are they doing? What the fuck are they doing? Right? They're crazy. Right? They're crazy. Once you've made the first billion, I would argue once you've made the first 10 or 15 million, but let's say 50 million. Once you've made $50 million, you have nothing to worry about. So why not spend the rest of your business acumen and energy solving problems that your kids are actually, your grandkids are actually going to benefit from? And if you're not doing that, then I think you're already crazy. So they are insane. They are sociopathic. They are committed to a symbol system. They're playing Sim City. It's not real. It's a strange game. They don't care whether the thing really helps anybody or not. I mean, why should they? It's a matter of amassing enough money to pay for your space program, or to be able to upload your consciousness to the cloud, or whatever it is they think they can do with multiple billions of dollars.
We are also sitting around the corner from Zuccotti Park, which was, I think, the ground zero, if that's the right word, for Occupy.
Yeah.
When you think back to Occupy today, and perhaps at the time, did you always think that it was flawed? Was it always inevitably going to end in failure? Was it designed almost as theatre to end in failure? Or was there potential in that movement? And of course it was happening at the same time as the Arab Spring and all the supposed promise of social media.
I mean, it was destined for failure in the sense that a group of activists could not occupy Zuccotti Park forever. And I spoke there a couple of times, and in one of my talks, it was a few weeks before it ended, and I could see the writing on the wall that it was going to be shut down. I was trying to explain to them that Occupy is not something that ends with the end of the occupation of Zuccotti Park. Occupy continues on as a normative state. So Occupy is a way of occupying reality, of occupying the world, of always asking the question, since when? Why do we do things this way? How do we denaturalize power enough to trigger people's agency so they can, in a socially cohesive way, make the change that they want to make? So I still see Occupy as a success, not as a failure. It initiated an understanding. We're still figuring out, it turns out, arresting 500-600 years of extractive corporate capitalism and colonialism, it may take more than one occupation of a park in New York to do it. It's a long, slow shift that we need to create. We could even look at Trump and the radical right as part of a much larger effort to arrest the wheels of industry, the automatic subjugation of humanity by neoliberalism. It's just doing it in not the most mature, open-hearted way, but it's a reaction to the same, technocratic, overwhelming technocratic energy.
It seems as if those 5 years between the crash or the recession and Trumpism was a kind of interregnum. Neoliberalism had clearly failed.
Right.
And yet no one, Occupy was theatre, it was attractive, but as you said, it was in an odd way almost designed to fail. Was this a truly surreal moment in a kind of Gramscian sense where everyone knew that the world was changing, but no one quite knew how?
Yeah, there was the feeling. It's a little bit like if you ever have one of those dreams where the car goes off a cliff or you're falling, and in the dream it's like you're going to land somewhere because you're dreaming, right? So you're not going to die, but you don't know where. I feel like that kind of happened. I agree that it was somehow 9/11 combined with the recession and our understanding that the institutions of the 20th century were really not up to the challenges ahead. But there wasn't a heck of a lot of concerted effort at retrieving the functions of the failing institutions and getting them operational in other ways before we hit bottom. How are we going to care for each other? How are we going to grow food? So it's like people know, a plate of broccoli only has 50% of the nutrients that it did 50 years ago because the topsoil is dying. But are we going to do something about it? Or climate change? Oh shit, it's a 1.5 degrees already and But what are we actually doing about it? Oh, the European Union, it really seems unworkable. And all these nations, the rich nations, the poor nations, the North and the South, and these ones are leaving it. And England is going away, and it's like, but you just kind of like holding on. People, like the roller coaster went off the thing, and it's like, what? Where are we going to go? And it is odd. It was as if people almost had faith that something is going to come and rescue us from this. And I think that's part of the appeal of Trump for a lot of people, is he's saying, I got this. I got this. We're gonna do it. I can understand that. When's mommy or daddy or someone gonna come and make this okay? It's just we're not in the 20th century anymore. We're not in a world where a leader can take us in a eyes on the prize journey up the hill through the ends justifies the means journey to salvation. We're in a much more of a networked, bottom-up, grassroots reality where we have to be the adults here. We have to figure out how to do it, not at scale, but in our own communities in ways that reduce pressure on these obsolete, fracturing institutions and give them time to sort of reconfigure and reboot for a new reality.
Why is it, though, the success of reactionaries like Trump in their critique and attack on globalization, on free trade, their support of terrorists, they're not economists, but their dismissal of most of the principles of neoliberalism. Why was it so much more successful from the right than from the left?
The left never did it. And when the left tried to do it, the left's political institutions had better safeguards against it. The Democratic Party and its super delegate voting structure was able to repress Bernie Sanders in a way that the Republican Party, with its one delegate, one vote system, was not able to repress Trump. So we had the old school against the right's new school, and we repressed our new school.
Is there a cultural element here? There are a lot of critics, particularly on the left, who argue that progressives became preoccupied with cultural identity, with what its critics call woke.
The establishment left pandered to identity politics in an insincere way that served neither people who were peoples whose identities were emerging or themselves. It was the left pandered to and promoted identity politics as a form of consumerism, of individualism, in a way that undermined our ability to establish rapport and form solidarity. They became so technocratic, so one-to-one marketing that that they undermined what the left could have had. So yes, in some sense, by abusing and leveraging identity politics in unhealthy and fractious ways, they tore apart their ability to serve as a unifying movement.
Meanwhile, technology, of course, hasn't stood still. We have now AI. How do we make sense of that, Doug, historically? Is it just another Web 2, another dot-com boom, or is it substantively different?
AI, it's not that AI is substantively different, but AI is, in some sense, the first native app of the internet. What have we been doing? It's what McLuhan would say. Any new medium, the first content of the new medium is the last medium. So the television became the content of the internet.
Right, and television was radio, and radio was print, and blah, blah.
Right. So until now, the main content of the internet was Netflix, Amazon Prime. It was the old media. I feel like AI is the first native content of the net. It's the first thing that really lives up to Al Gore's dream for the internet, which it was Al Gore's dream for what the internet would do. And he said that the internet, he said, I believe we have all the information we need to solve pretty much all of the world's problems, from climate change, cancer, to whatever. It's all over the place. So the internet is going to allow us to aggregate kind of all that information and connect it all. But even though we had the internet, no human mind, no search engine could bring it all together. AI can work fast enough to say, oh, this piece, that piece, this piece, that piece, put them all together, and here you got it. So it's going to be, and that's what we're really seeing now. It's so funny. The minute they do an anti-monopoly suit against a company, it means that company's technology is over. So right now they're finally got Google's their search engine, it means that perplexity and AI is replacing the search
Yeah,
box.
in the same way as they went after Microsoft in the 90s when the internet was a reality.
Exactly. It's too late, buddies. It's too late to unbundle their browser. Yeah.
Well, these governments are always fighting the next war. So it's a brilliant Rushkoffian observation that AI is the first native app of the internet. Should we be celebrating that, Doug, or fearing it?
We have to do one or the other. We should taking charge of it. We should be
Team human.
Team human, right?
Agency.
Yeah, that's the choice. I mean, I do think that there's a certain inevitability to the development of new technologies, whatever they may be. And not all of us, but some of us should be heavily invested in promoting the human agendas of these things. And I do think, I was just at a meeting of doctors yesterday who were thinking about bringing AI into their practices, and a lot of people are aware they want to bring AI into things in ways that promote and foster their humanity. So we use AI to offload the data to the AI so we have more time and energy to be human beings. And that's not rocket science. We can do that. But if we deploy AI solely to extract as much money and time from people as possible by any means necessary, and tell the AIs to keep iterating their strategies, we don't care how, until they can do it, then they will suck us dry. They really will. So it's what do we choose to program these things to do?
Yeah, sucking us dry is an ugly, it's not, I don't mean this critically, it's certainly an ugly metaphor. Two final questions, Doug. I know you've got to run. You've been very generous with your time. We're celebrating this series as part of the celebration of DLD's 20-year anniversary between 2005 and 2025. They'll be doing the 20th event in January of next year. What have we most learned in this 20 years that we didn't know in 2005?
I think we've learned about technology what a lot of us learned about psychedelics in the 90s, which is that...
Those of us, of course, who partook, not everyone did.
Right, or we as a society. I think those of us, what they thought in the 60s was that if you could just give everybody acid, they were all going to become enlightened and anti-war and nice people. And in the 90s and even the early 2000s, many of us believed that all we had to do was get these people online and experiencing this global community of sharing and ideas and discussion, and they would realize everybody matters, everyone has value, that we are no longer best served by a top-down, hierarchical, extractive world, but one where we're all connected laterally and communally together. And what we learned in the last 20 years is that, so far anyway, the people who do this in a top-down, extractive, super heroic way still win. Right? That you can be on the net and have all these experiences and still be an asshole. So that the net itself is not a transformative force. Right? The net will catalyze and bring about whoever you are. It will amplify what we're doing. It will not set the agenda for us.
And finally, cast your very agile mind forward to 2045, 20 years after 2025. you're too smart to be a futurist, but what could we be looking for in 2020, 2045?
You could be looking for water, right? I think that's the main thing. I think we will be using technology to manage, sequester, and distribute essential resources that we had no idea could become as scarce as they will have. So I think the internet and what would we call it? Resource distribution will be understood as the same thing.
Ever the pessimist, Douglas Rushkoff.
I think that's optimistic, that we're here in 20 years and using technology to distribute resources to humanity is a much more optimistic dream than most people have of what's happening in 20 years. I'm the one without a bunker.
Can I step on the scene? I'm ready to attack. Andrew Keane. Yeah, he's the one to bash. Asking questions, no filter, just keeps on grinning. He is the man who's got the whole crowd spinning. Money, fame, success, it's all in his sight. He'll dig deep, expose you with all his might. No sugarcoating, he'll cut right through. Andrew Keane, he's the one to spew. Yeah, he's an expert.